The Milwaukee Bucks fired their head coach Adrian Griffin and then danced in celebration the very next game like they had just won the NBA Finals. They are without question the weirdest team in the NBA right now. And that's not even the only reason. It gets much weirder. I am not gonna lie, when Adrian Griffin was hired after Mike Budenholzer was fired, I thought this would be a successful stint for the first-time head coach. Then, of course, to make matters even better for him, the Bucks went out and got Damian freaking Lillard on their roster to pair up with the freakiest man in Milwaukee, Giannis. But as the season went along, it was clear that there was a distrust between Giannis and Griffin. They often clashed heads about Giannis's minutes. Griffin would try and sub him out, and Giannis would flat out tell him no. While many would call this being uncoachable and disrespectful, we have to understand that Giannis is the main man on campus. He brought the city their first title in 50 years. Anything he says goes. He even handpicked Adrian Griffin over Nick Nurse, even though it was reported that the Bucks really wanted Nurse. But for some reason, Giannis didn't want him at all, which is just weird. If anyone would know how elite of a coach he is, you would think it would be Giannis, right? Nick Nurse took the Raptors head coaching job in June of 2018, was tasked with leading a team that had experienced playoff heartbreaks in the past, and Nurse wasted no time implementing his vision for a dynamic, adaptive style of play. One of Nurse's early signs of genius was the implementation of a defensive system that emphasized versatility and adaptability. The Raptors became known for their box-and-one defense, a strategy rarely seen in the NBA. This innovative approach involved 4 defenders playing in a zone formation while a 5th player, often tasked with guarding the opponent's best scorer, played man-to-man. The unorthodox tactic confounded opponents and showcased Nurse's willingness to experiment in order to get the advantage on the opposition. Nurse's adaptability extended to the offensive end as well, where he showcased a willingness to tweak strategies based on matchups and personnel. As the Raptors progressed through the regular season, Nurse demonstrated a knack for maximizing the strengths of his roster, whether it was adjusting the starting lineup, experimenting with offensive sets, or empowering role players to step up. The Raptors faced significant challenges in the postseason, with very tough opponents standing in their way. The Philadelphia 76ers, and of course Giannis's Milwaukee Bucks, posed substantial threats, but Nurse's ability to make in-game adjustments and exploit weakness became the key to Toronto's playoff success. In the Eastern Conference Finals against the Bucks, Nurse made a pivotal decision to deploy a box-and-one defense against Milwaukee star Giannis Antetokounmpo. The unorthodox strategy paid dividends, as the Raptors clawed back from a 2-0 series deficit to secure a finals. Then the NBA Finals presented the ultimate challenge in the form of the Golden State Warriors, a team that had dominated the league in recent years, which is starting to seem harder and harder to believe seeing how they're falling apart now. But Nurse's strategic brilliance and ability to make timely decisions were never more evident than in this series. He expertly managed the workload of Kawhi Leonard, the Raptors superstar, ensuring that Leonard's minutes were maximized for impact. All of this and more is why he would have been the perfect candidate for the job. Giannis had to have had some level of hatred towards Nurse to pick a rookie coach over him. Or maybe I'm sort of reaching here, and it's not hatred. Maybe he just genuinely believed that Griffin was the man for the job. I must say, though, it was a lot of pressure to put on Griffin's shoulders to start the year. Milwaukee seemed to have peaked as a team. They were beaten in the first round and obliterated by Jimmy Butler. And that was with having 3 Defensive Player of the Year level defenders on the same damn roster, which is literally unheard of. Yet Jimmy Butler was still able to get, well, buckets, and dominated all of them like he was prime Michael Jordan. A lot of rumors started to spark surrounding Giannis's future in Milwaukee, and questions started to be asked whether or not the trio of Giannis, Drew, and Chris Middleton had run its course. And well, I guess it sort of did, because as we know, they would trade Drew for Dame. Now it was championship or bust, which is not a fire I would want to throw a rookie head coach into. And it certainly didn't help that Damian Lillard started off the year slow. In fact, he's still not the Dame we all know and love. He's shooting very poor from 3 and the field. Not only that, but he's made a strong case for being the worst defender in the entire league at the moment. But the odd thing is that the Bucks were still winning games despite the problems, which is why everyone was so surprised when they announced they would be throwing him out the door like Will Smith from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But while casual fans didn't understand why the move was done, the true ball and stat watchers knew that Milwaukee struggled on defense. And despite what people might try and tell you nowadays, defense still wins championships. I don't care if the Bucks averaged 145 points per game. If they're in the bottom 10 in the league in defensive ranking, they won't even sniff the NBA Finals. This all falls back on Griffin though. Despite not having Drew, you still have Giannis and Brook Lopez for crying out loud. Most teams would die to have two of the best defenders / rim protectors on one team. Not to mention they put in work offensively as well. If anything, this trade shows how elite of a defender Drew Holiday really is. The Bucks were a top 5 defense last year. Now they're in and out of the 20s post Drew. The Bucks have no resistance out there on the perimeter. I am 100% certain that me and you could go out there and combine for at least 10 on this defense. Their guards are Dame, Malik Beasley, Cam Payne, and Pat Connaughton. I mean, like, oh my goodness, can you even possibly name a worse defensive backcourt than that? It's just ridiculous. You just simply aren't winning games with poor guard defenders in a league filled with elite guards. Tyrese Maxey, Tyrese Halliburton, Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, and Trae Young would have a field day with the Bucks defensive backcourt. And now we get to today. Doc Rivers is the Bucks head coach replacement, and there definitely has been a lot of backlash regarding this. One recurring criticism of Doc Rivers centers around his playoff performances, particularly in recent years. Despite coaching talented rosters, Rivers has faced challenges in translating regular season success into deep postseason runs. Critics point to instances where his teams, laden with star power, fell short of expectations in crucial playoff series. Notable examples include the LA Clippers' disappointing collapse in the 2020 NBA playoffs, where they blew a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference semifinals. Detractors argue that Rivers has struggled to make effective in-game adjustments during critical playoff moments. His reliance on certain rotations and a reluctance to deviate from a predetermined game plan has been cited as a weakness, particularly when facing coaches known for their strategic adaptability. Critics claim that Rivers' coaching style may lack the flexibility needed to counteract opponents who can adjust on the fly. Another aspect of criticism revolves around Rivers' perceived inability to maximize the potential of star-studded rosters. Despite coaching multiple all-star players and future Hall of Famers, Rivers has faced scrutiny for not consistently turning regular season success into championships. Some argue that his teams have underachieved given the talent at his disposal, suggesting that he may have struggled to create a cohesive system that fully harnesses the strengths of his star players. Furthermore, critics also argue that Rivers has faced challenges in developing and integrating young talent. Throughout his coaching career, Rivers has often coached teams with established veterans, and some question his ability to nurture and bring out the best in younger, less experienced players. In a league increasingly reliant on player development and a youth-driven approach, this aspect of coaching has become a focal point for evaluating a coach's long-term success. Overall, he just hasn't been the best coach, which is the reason why he was in the commentator booth instead of on the sidelines in the first place. This is just another disaster waiting to happen. Doc has already shown the inability to win with star players. Now he was just handed Dame and Giannis, after just having James Harden and Joel Embiid last season. Giannis is obviously in win mode, and he's already let it be known that if a coach doesn't meet his standards, he will send them packing. And I'm trying to be positive for Coach Rivers, but the quote-unquote Doc has done everything but help his teams, instead oftentimes doing the opposite. But let's just say that the Bucks make the playoffs, which they will, and they lose in round 1 or 2 and Doc Rivers is mostly to blame. What happens next? I mean, I highly doubt you move forward with him if that happens due to his lackluster track record. And then the Bucks will be in an even deeper hole and will search for another coach. It just doesn't look good for the Bucks. It's a weird situation. Recently, Giannis would say this about the expectations that are now upon Doc Rivers. You lose, it feels like the whole world is ending. You win by 5, why didn't you win by 20? You have Giannis, you have Dame, you have Chris Middleton. It's hard. Nothing is good enough. Only a championship is good enough. We've got to get to that point, which is crazy, but I'm embracing it. I'm okay with it. I can sleep well at night. And I think having somebody like that, he's not uneasy with that. He's confident. Having somebody like that, I think he makes the environment of the locker room better. We know that he's played in tough games. We know that he's played in 2 NBA finals. Like, he's been there before. We've been there one time. We want to go there again, and sometimes having people with experience next to you, it helps. So yeah, it seems like he's really on board with Doc. However, he said very similar things about Adrian Griffin, and look how that turned out. So only time will tell whether or not this will work out. But if I had to bet money, I would bet on it doesn't work. But I want you guys to let me know how good or bad Doc Rivers will be for the Bucks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.